Welcome into Raptors today. Akil Augustine, as always, joined by Sherman Hamilton and the principal, Paul Jones, talking about a very disappointing outing for your Toronto Raptors. 118-114, the final, as they fall to the Indiana Canadians, dare I say that. 3 Canadian starters in the starting lineup, so Canadian basketball fans disappointed for the Raptors, but they got some good news in that the kids are all right. Yeah. The kids are balling. Let's start with this
First time ever. First time ever
3
that
Canadians.
3 Canadians have started on one team.
The Pacers are committed. Duarte out. He's technically considered a Canadian, so they've got a lot of Canadian talent up on that group.
Yeah, they do.
Okay,
yeah.
But let's talk about the other Canadian guys. That's the Raptors. Sherman, I'll start with you. They can't seem to get over the hump against this Pacers team, but let's talk specifically last night. What was the issue for this Raptors group?
There's a few issues. The first issue was, they gave up, 36 points in the first quarter and over 60% shooting. So now you've set a template offensively for the Indiana Pacers to feel very comfortable in your arena. The flip side of that means that defensively, you have a lot of holes. You're allowing a lot of paint penetration. They really struggle to keep the ball in front of them. Andrew Nembhard was excellent in that first quarter. He constantly broke down the Raptors off the dribble. He got into the middle, knocked down a 3. But if you're looking at the clips and look at the paint points, everything's at the rim pretty much for this team. And that's a problem if you're the Raptors. You can't have that much deep penetration and no protection at the rim. And they struggled with that in the first half, and that just gave too much confidence to the Pacers throughout the game. So defensively, they couldn't get it going early in the game, and then offensively, they struggled in terms of keeping up field goal percentage-wise with the Pacers. The Raptors, I think, scored 26 points in the first quarter, so it was enough. But they're shooting 60+%. You're shooting 40%. That means that you've got to shoot that much more shots to keep up. That's a difficult way to do it, and that's kind of how the Raptors try to win games, but it's difficult when a team is that hot.
To drill down a little further into what Sherm was saying, I agree. The Raptors went in on a 7-game home winning streak, winning all 7 first quarters, scoring an average of 32 points on 55% from the floor. Last night, as Sherm said, 26 points, 43%. And again, I continue to say this, because the NBA has taken the shine off the defense, it's been slightly devalued. You still have to play it, but your offense has to keep you in games. I look at the Milwaukee game before this, where the Bucks were blazing in the first quarter, shooting 56% or whatever, but the Raptors were shooting 54%. And in spite of turning Indiana over the course of the game and scoring all those points off turnovers, their offense, because your offense needs to keep you in games now. Gone are the days of the 90s where I'm not scoring, okay, you're not scoring, and we're going to make this a rock fight, and we're going to grab and hold. You can't do that anymore. And the template, as Sherm said, the die was cast early with the Pacers' comfort. I'll give you another factor, too. We talked about the 3 Canadians. It's what Toronto Maple Leaf brass used to call the Leaf effect. These kids stay home and watch Hockey Night in Canada every Saturday night, and they're playing in Pickering and in Brampton or whatever, and they go and play in the OHL or college hockey, and then they make a pro team, and they come back to Toronto, and all their families there, and they are juiced up.
Yeah, we saw that a lot the last couple of weeks.
You see it all the time, right? So Andrew Nembhard from Aurora last night, his dad Claude and his mom Mary, Claude, terrific guy, close friend, vice president of the OBA, he's in the house. Security told me they had a record number of people. Take any Canadian at any point. Tristan Thompson, Corey Joseph, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. They had a record number of people waiting after the game. O'Shea Brissett's in the game. He's a former Raptor. You know he's got an edge being let go by Toronto, coming back. He squares up against OG, who's his good friend. He's not afraid.
Yep.
He's trying to prove something. And then Benedict Mathurin, to use Sherm's word, that guy just ignorant sometimes.
His family's in the building.
Yeah, but he's tough. He's a tough guy, and it doesn't matter if he's playing on Mars. So you have that compounding variable to go with all the other stuff that the Pacers were able to establish. And I give Rick Carlisle credit. Every time the Raptors scored a basket and it looked like the building might catch on fire, He took out his fire hose, timeout, wet it down. They score out of the timeout. Nothing gets going for Toronto.
Yeah, Nembhard averages around 9 points per game, coming out with 25 points. A big night. He knew the crowd was there
10
for him.
assists, too.
Yeah, he showed out. Now, let's talk about the Toronto Raptors on the other side because, of course, they were missing some key pieces. Scotty Barnes still day-to-day with that wrist injury. The elbow ends up flaring up for Gary Trent, right? Yep. And then you got the hamstring of Precious Achiuwa. So down some bodies, but that did provide an opportunity for Pascal Siakam, who over the last 10 is averaging about 18 points a game, far off the season average, Jonesy. An important game for him despite the loss.
I thought, after a bit of a slow start, again, like we saw in the last home win, he played with tremendous energy in the second half. He really did. And we had one of those rare nights, maybe because there were people down, where Pascal and Fred, as you see here, both got it going on the same night. But I thought Pascal did that really well. Got into the lane, was aggressive, determined, and played with great energy. I mean, that's a big night. 31 points, 10 rebounds, 17 shots, 11 of 17. That's a big night, and it's too bad for the Raptors. They couldn't take advantage of a big night from Pascal to come out with a win.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, I think he only had 6 points in the first half.
That's it.
So he had 25 in the second half.
Great energy.
He went to work, and in the fourth quarter, he was very big for the Raptors. But, again, we're talking about a little too late, right?
Yeah.
This was a situation where you needed that in the first half, some of that kind of juice in the first half to kind of keep the Pacers at bay. But Pascal is getting much more fluid with the style that they're playing now. He's finding his spots. He's aggressive in it. He's getting to the free throw line. He's doing a lot of positive things, and it's good to see him play at that level. Now, I mean, this was a first half that we don't usually see from Pascal. But moving forward, I mean, we're looking at the situation and seeing that there's very, very little room for those kind of mishaps based on what's left in the season. 9 games left, you got to get everything out of it, squeeze everything out of the orange basically right now to make sure that you help put yourself in the best position.
All right, well, some changes need to be made. Will Barton was thrown into the starting lineup. Lots of decisions for Nick Nurse to make. And, of course, our Savannah Hamilton updates us on exactly what was going on.
Akil, to the left of me is an entire crowd that came out for the Canadians playing in tonight's game. But let's talk about the starting lineup and all the adjustments that the Raptors have had to make in this one because they fell short to the Pacers, of course. Andrew Nembhard played very, very well with 25 points, and that was hard to stop. But Will Barton, he was the guy that came into the starting lineup. Probably didn't have the night that he wanted to have himself, but, Malachi Flynn, you got to give him a lot of credit because he came in off the bench and had an immediate impact, dropping a few threes, getting the team re-energized, and then obviously Pascal Siakam plugging the gap of missing Scotty Barnes, of missing, guys like Precious and Gary Trent Jr. as well, that you could really feel that impact as the Raptors only shot 20% from the three-point line. And also, they dropped this one at home, and they were previously before this 7-0 win streak at home, and now here they are. They have to fight back with a lot of missing bodies, and this is a very important stretch up ahead. So you got to give it to them. At the same time, they know that they have a big game coming up on Friday. Back to you, Akil.
Refresh the standing every 5.
Oh no, I think obviously they got great players, guys that can make shots and all. I think we got caught up a couple of times in between switching and staying with our man. They do a lot of slipping, sometimes they set, sometimes they don't. And I think we got caught up into sometimes helping too much and sometimes we didn't. So it was definitely a difficult game for us since I feel like they had more energy than us. They were moving the ball a lot faster. They were going on transition. Even when we were scoring, they were just getting the ball and getting it out on the other side. And they got great two-point shooters, so they made the shot.
You guys have played games this year, obviously, where you're missing one guy or two guys. How tough is it to be missing three and have guys in roles that they're not used to being in?
I mean, obviously, when you play a whole year with the same rotation, kind of same player, it's not an excuse for us. We got to keep playing and all that, but obviously, we're missing good guys like Scotty Barnes, obviously Gary Trent, Those guys could do a lot of things on the floor, obviously. Precious. So, yeah, clearly, we missed them today, but it's not an excuse. We could have won this game. Obviously, there's a couple breaks that we had that cost us. I think there's a couple fouls that went the other way, too, that didn't help us. Obviously, we can't blame the refs for that, but things happen.
Games like tonight make you excited about the future of Canadian basketball?
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, you see O'Shea, Ben, Andrew. All these guys I've been around them. I've seen them play. They're all, talented guys. And, you can see it all around the league, Shea, Dylan, everybody. It's just it's a really great place to be in for Canada as, NBA players and having guys that are really successful in the league.
Yeah, that was part of it. It was a lot of things tonight. I thought just overall low energy, low compete level, lack of execution, not really trying to get done what we were trying to get done, So it really just got completely outplayed. If you watch the game, look at the stats and pretty much every aspect, points in the paint, second chance points, fast break points. We turned them over 18 times, but other than that, they just outplayed us tonight.
Energy has been a word that we come back to frequently. Do you have any answer for it tonight?
No, look, it was, one of those ones. So we got to be able to move on, short-term memory, and focus on the ones in front of us. But I just thought, everything was a little step slow on defense and a lot of short shots. And, the ball was sticking. That happens when you're just not moving. Bodies weren't moving, at the normal speed we need them to. And the way we play, we need to be pretty crisp. And I just didn't think we had that overall. But give those guys a lot of credit. They deserve to win tonight.
You guys had a lot of trouble guarding the double drag actions towards the end. When that is going well for you guys, do you find it's being more sticky at the point of attack or being kind of quicker on the back-end rotations?
We just didn't have an answer at all, and we didn't really get to an adjustment that worked either. So, I'm sure, we'll look at the tape and, understand we could have done something differently. But, overall our defense has been a lot better than it was tonight. But, they spread the floor pretty well. They play a lot of different guards. And, that was just, a tough matchup in that regard. We just couldn't get it under control out front. And, pretty much the whole game. We had good defense in a couple minute spurts, maybe in the second and third a little bit there. But other than that, they pretty much got whatever they wanted.
Pascal did a good job of reading the defense as the game went on. Do you see that happening in real time as he's kind of picking that stuff up and making those adjustments in the middle of the game?
Yeah, just being more patient. I think he's just letting it come to him. And early on, just missed a couple bunnies and then, took his time, figured out where he could attack and seeing where the help was coming from and was able to find his spot. So I thought he played a really good game offensively, and then we just couldn't, make the plays down the stretch that we needed to. Probably needed to score a little bit more the way our defense was going. And 20% from three, and this is one of those nasty, ugly games for us. But we got games in front of us, so we gotta get better and try to put a better performance together.
Apologies, we just had some technical difficulties with the audio, but you just heard from the players. We'll jump right back into the conversation with our guys Sherman, Jonesy, and we're talking about watching the clock or the schedule as both the Hawks and the Bulls took L's on a night when the Raptors had an opportunity to get a W against the Pacers and kind of move further up in the standings and remove the Chicago Bulls from being close to them. So let's talk about this. How much does that impact the players, Jones? Do you think they're watching these other games?
Well, they might have an idea, but they're not like you and me.
Yeah.
I know you and I are both two of a kind. Like, I'm refreshing the standings every 5 minutes, even though there hasn't been a game, like as if they're going to change. But you got to take care of your own business. You really do. And that's what you need to concentrate on. And then you can go look at the standings. Then you can go and look at, oh, by the way, oh, they lost. Oh, they won. But you have to be locked in on, and not distracted by the standings, locked in on your own task.
Put the phone on dark mode.
Whatever it takes. You just have to focus on yourself and start working your way up the standings, putting notches in the left-hand column, winning games. And then you can go back and look at the standings. It's like running a race, man. If you're not in your lane and you're looking to the left and to the right, that's a distraction. It's not going to help you get where you're going.
Yeah, I think they're aware, but they're not consumed by it, and that's the way to be. You want to know what's happening, but you don't want that to be the focus if you're the Raptors. The good thing is there was no movement.
Yeah.
The bad thing is there's one less game to get the job done, and that's where the understanding of, as Jonesy was saying, you got to take care of what you can control right now, and the Raptors have a few more games at home that they have to take care of, starting with Detroit. So I just think that their focus, to me, should be even more sharp going into the Detroit game because of what happened against Indiana. You know, you can't take it for granted. You can't let another team come in, especially with 9 games left in the season, and give up a first quarter. You can't give up any part of a quarter anymore. You've got to play everything to the full tilt. So I just think that if there wasn't a wake-up call, that was a wake-up call, and now they've got to really get on that track.
To the point of your question too, Akil, if you're taking, Sherman and I talked about it, if you're taking care of your business, now the other teams start feeling pressure. They're looking at the standings going, dang, Toronto won again. Dang, Toronto won again. And maybe it's put some pressure on them if they're consumed by it or starting to pay attention to it. So you got to focus on your stuff.
Well, you're right, and it's a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
You win this game, Chicago and Atlanta loses, the picture changes significantly. So you let one go. You don't like that feeling. You can't let it happen again.
No pocket watching for the Toronto Raptors, but let's talk about picking pockets for a second because, of course, you mentioned that first quarter, disappointing effort, but traditionally for this Raptors team, defense comes naturally to them. Their style has allowed a lot of different players. You look like OG Anunoby, league leader in steals, or at least he's tied up there with Anthony Edwards, but he's played more games. And you look at some of the other guys like Fred VanVleet, they're all up there in the top 10 in getting the steals. So what is it about this defense, Sherm, I'll start with you, that allows this? Is it the switching style that kind of gets guys in that passing lane? Because they do it while still maintaining that, now that Jakob's there, at least some semblance of rim protection.
Well, I think we've talked about this many times. Steals can be an indication of just gambling on the floor, and it can really hurt your team, where steals can be an indication of good, solid defense culminating in the proper time to go for a steal. I don't think the Raptors gamble that much. I feel like they're a team that will stay in front of you as much as they can defensively, and they have good anticipatory players that can get into passing lanes, and they're very active. And a guy like OG who's physical, he's busting through screens. You know, he's keeping his chest on people, so they don't really have great room to accept passes. I just think that the defensive accountability is high on this team. And that's why it can be frustrating when they're not playing the brand of defense that we know they can play. But there's no question, from the coaching level, there's an expectation that they play defense and play it at a high level. Exactly.
Yeah.
And the culmination of that is Gary Trent is a high steals guy. Fred VanVleet is a high steals guy. OG, as you mentioned, is a high steal guy. So to me, it makes sense based on the directives from the coaches.
I look at those 3 guys in the top 10, and to Sherm's point about the anticipatory skills, the knack, the innate nature of now's the time to go for the ball. Your 3 tenets of defense are pressure on the ball. What are you doing one pass away? The deny one pass away in the help side. And the Raptors pride themselves on number 1, pressuring the ball. Well, in any sport, when you take away somebody's time and space, they'll be prone to mistakes. And if the other guys are locked into tenets number 2 and 3, the help side and one pass away, you're going to get steals. And then you think about the other parts of good defensive players, being in the right position, moving your feet, active hands. Communication. All those things go with the Raptors. All those things go. So that, to me, that's why they get steals. And they're not necessarily all the gambling steals that leave the back door wide open. They lead to runouts. Look at number 1 in steals and look at the categories that come with it. Number 1 in points off turnovers. Number 2 in fast break points. All of those things because they're playing those 3 tenets of defense. Pressure on the ball, one pass away, and the help side. And I think the guys fit that system as well, and there's an expectation.
You know, there's one way you can really tell when they're locked in. When guys come over half court defensively and they have their hands out.
Yeah.
This is something that they practice. They want to be long. They want to be athletic and angular. And when guys are just back there and their hands are up and they're creating vision problems in terms of passing lanes and showing the offense, this is what you got to get through, you know they're locked in on that side.
Hey, man, I could be a DB if I had Aaron Donald up there. The quarterback's running for his life, and he's throwing it over. I'm going to get interceptions. I'm going to get pickoffs. And I just think their ball pressure is something they stress, and it leads to all these issues.
All right, from the Raptors defense, now we got to talk about one of the all-time greats, an important member of our Atlantic Division rival, and this is Willis Reed of the New York Knicks, who unfortunately the league announced passed. And I want to give you guys an opportunity because I know you guys are longtime NBA fans. This year we've had to say goodbye to some important people in the league, but memories, thoughts on the great Willis Reed.
When there was no NBA team with most of my relatives in New York City, I was and still am. I was a Knick fan and always kind of a closet Knick fan. And Willis Reed was a huge part of that organization. I was a kid when, he came out onto the floor when they thought he was injured and wasn't going to play. And I had some brief conversations with Mr. Reed. He's one of those guys. He's not Willis. He's Mr. Reed when the Raptors were in their infancy, and he was still the general manager for the New Jersey Nets. Very nice man, very welcoming. And again, I look at him. There's a guy from an HBCU, Grambling State. And you think back to those days with guys like Willis Reed, Earl Monroe from Winston-Salem State, all of those small places that gave the NBA quality people. Like Bill Russell, we need to do something to make sure that his legacy perseveres. There's a shot I'm talking about. I still remember.
Here comes Willis, Marv Albert.
Was it Marv Albert? Maybe ABC was Chris Schenkel. I don't know, but those were the Sunday afternoon games that I used to watch. And Willis Reed with like DeBusschere and Clyde Frazier and Bill Bradley, Phil Jackson. Those were great Knick teams, and Willis Reed was the leader.
Yeah, historically, the NBA is made of iconic moments. And what we just saw on that screen was an iconic NBA moment.
Yeah.
It was motivational. It was inspirational. And, the argument is made that the 2 buckets he made to start the game
In a Game 7.
Yeah.
led to the emotional energy to beat and to get that W to end a series and win a championship. And it speaks to the man himself, Willis Reed, in terms of what he was willing to do when everything was on the line, put his body on the line to help his team get that championship. And it also speaks to what team was back in the day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The embodiment of what it meant to be a part of a team and play your role.
No
if
load
you've got
management.
40%, give me 100% of your 40%.
Yeah.
And that embodied that. But, by all accounts, an iconic figure and a great man. And I never had a chance to meet him, but the stories that have been told about him are great. And it's just, it's hard to deal with the loss of such great people.
It's hard to say goodbye to those icons. Bill Russell, Willis Reed, these guys. It's tough.
Well, with that, we do say goodbye to Willis Reed. Thoughts and prayers with his friends and family in the New York Knicks organization. Right now, we hand you off to the head coach of our Toronto Raptors, and that is Nick Nurse.
Agree, right? We didn't feel super organized at either end at the start, right, or for a while. I thought that we let a lot of chances go. I thought we had a lot of fast break opportunities we didn't score on in the first half. Didn't shoot it nearly well enough with, a bunch of wide open shots, in the game as well. And just couldn't quite get over the hump.
You knew their guards were really quick and were going to get by you, and I guess Nembhard had a really big night. Yeah. And McConnell did what he does, right?
Yeah. Those guys were trouble. I mean, Nembhard obviously at the start was big. We looked like we were moving a full step slow there. He was getting past us into the rim pretty easily. To start the game, we didn't put up much resistance at all. Maybe the first 9 to 12 possessions. I think at the first time out they were shooting 75% from the field. So that was a tough start. I thought we started doing some good things there in stretches, late in the first half, and a lot of stretches in the second. And then they made a bunch of big threes, I thought. I mean, we made them miss a bunch in a row there, but they hit 3 big threes late in the game that just kept letting them inch away from us, and we had probably the same looks or better and just couldn't answer back with them.
Did you like how Siakam shifted in the second half? He was more aggressive.
Well, he shifted towards the end of the first half, I thought, and played. I mean, like, we're down a couple guys and missing some scoring and things like that, and you need Fred, Pascal, OG, our main guys to step up and play. And I didn't think Pascal was into the game early, but he certainly got going towards the end of the second half, and certainly most of the second half, yeah.
Friday night, an opportunity for the Toronto Raptors to get back on the right foot with the game against the Detroit Pistons, currently sitting last in the Eastern Conference. But you can't look past any opponent, as you guys constantly remind myself. So let's talk about one of the key parts of the future, not just the draft picks they're trying to get right now, but they took a risk in getting James Wiseman, who things did not work out for with the Golden State Warriors. Sherman, I'll ask you, what's changed for James Wiseman other than getting a lot more opportunity to play, because this team's not expecting me to playoffs? It's allowing him to maybe have some semblance of a brighter future with this Pistons team.
Probably just a change of environment. I mean, there's a lot of high-level expectations in Golden State, championship aspirations, and remember, coming out of college, he didn't play much.
Nope.
He came to a team that was ready to make a move for a championship, had some health issues, some work ethic issues apparently, but now he's with Dwayne Casey. He's with a team that is on a different trajectory, and they're trying to figure out some young pieces, how they work together and moving forward. I think the opportunity to play consistently, to be able to make mistakes and grow, and don't underestimate. We saw it here in Toronto, the job Dwayne Casey did with young players and getting them to the next level and turning guys like DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry into these all-stars and into these great players in the league. So, Dwayne Casey has that ability, and I think it's a good fit. And sometimes you just need somebody to say, forget about what happened in the past. Here we go. Let's start fresh, and he's getting that opportunity.
It's about where you're drafted as much as who you're drafted by. And to that point, Golden State's on a different timetable when you look at where Steph, Clay Thompson, and Draymond are.
They were coming off a down year.
Injuries. But the window's open.
Yeah.
And Wiseman's, where he is in his career and his skill level and his experience doesn't fit that window right now. So they make the deal. And he fits better in Detroit. He really does. And when you think about the way the league is going, yes, there's a lot of pace and space, but the bigger you are that you can do that, there's still a premium on big people. And big people never go out of style in this game. You need a guy like Wiseman, especially in the East, if you're facing you're facing an Embiid. You've got guys crashing the paint like Giannis. You need a guy that size. And then to Sherm's point, Dwayne Casey, more than anybody else I've ever watched as a head coach, understands the idea of patience and taking sequential steps to make a guy a player. One step, all right, that's done. Consolidate that skill or those skills, boom, next step. And you keep adding to that. I think he's in a great place in Detroit because he's growing with a group of guys that are doing that. Don't look at the record. You're playing a team here that is hungry and is developing and doesn't have a lot of pressure, and Dwayne has had success against Toronto.
Dwayne Casey returns to Toronto once again as his Pistons take on the Toronto Raptors Friday night, 7:30. You can catch it on the Sportsnet family of networks, and that does it for us here on Raptors Today. We thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next week.